When you actually look at your performance against Bitcoin, if you're honest with yourself, which most people won't be in this space, you'll see that you're getting rinsed. And there's a short window to make crazy money, like 10x, 100x returns in crypto. There is, but there's a window. And unless you've really mastered what you're doing, you're just going to get ripped to shreds against more sophisticated investors that understand that.
G'day guys, welcome back to another episode of Tapping Into Crypto. We have teased this episode a fair bit in the last couple of weeks, but it's finally here. It's a very special episode and with a very special guest. So I'll start with introducing our guest. So today we're joined by crypto veteran and founder of the Crypto Consulting Institute, CCI, Joe Shew. Joe, welcome to the show.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate you having me.
Mate, it's a pleasure to have you on board. You welcomed us on board your yacht last Thursday in the Gold Coast, which the weather absolutely turned it on. So, mate, tell us a little bit about CCI and how that sort of came to be and your journey in crypto.
Yeah, I'll keep it fairly short and concise. Maybe we can talk about another episode in the future. But my background was finance, and I fortunately studied finance at university through the GFC. So through that time, I learned so much about how broken the system actually was, which was quite trivial. And I'll never forget, just a side note, which I found really fascinating. One of the teachers there who was teaching us about the stock market at the time didn't actually own any stocks, and he was teaching me about that. And I was like, well, this doesn't seem very congruent to what's going on. But anyway, that kind of shows you the reality maybe of the traditional system a bit. And yeah, that was an eye-opening event for me. Then I went deeper into finance when I finally moved to Melbourne. And I came across Bitcoin because of the whole Cypriot bank bail-in situation that happened back in 2014. And it was very eye-opening for me that banks could, all your hard-earned money, they can just come and collect what they choose to, depending on how much you got deposited. And they were buying Bitcoin at the time. And obviously a lot of Russians also have money in the Cypriot banks as well. So watching that unfold was very eye-opening for me. And I was like, so what's this Bitcoin thing? And then obviously Silk Road happened and you see people transacting in a different form of currency. So like anything, I wanted to learn properly rather than trying to piece together mainstream media kind of articles of what Bitcoin was, which obviously no one knew, and they still don't know, I think, today, judging with some of the things that they come out with. I went to learn from Martin Davison, who you met on the boat, he ran the first session in the Blockchain Center in Melbourne in 2014. I think it was April, May time. And I went to an event and he was basically educating three of us in the room at the time. And I sprayed him with questions. Every other word that came out of his mouth, I was just like, whoa, this is crazy. So yeah, that was my kind of foray into the space. And after that, I just learned more and more. I was heavy in stocks at the time. So I started to transition some into crypto or into Bitcoin at that stage. And I just got it. I think is the best way to describe it. Not necessarily the full tech side of it. I'm not super deep into the fundamentals on everything, but it just made logical sense to me to have a new standard away from a traditional system which is being controlled and manipulated in the way that it is. Obviously, the US printed 80% of the entire monetary supply in 18 months following COVID. So I think the writing is on the wall, and it was back then, and it still is today. So that was the general transition for me. And then I was good. I was really good because I've been trading stocks since I was 12 years old, believe it or not. And I just understood the fundamentals, and I shifted drastically through 2016. And that's when I was like, okay, now I can quit my job, focus on this full time. And then I stepped away actually from kind of doing anything. I went and did some crazy Vipassanas and all the silent meditation stuff to realign myself to find what my purpose in life is. And that's where CCI was born, which is, pretty wild to think back to it now. So early 2017 we started. And we've been going strong ever since, really, just building.
Yeah, mate. It's an incredible community. I met a few of the guys on the boat the other day, and just everyone's really, wants to sink their teeth into education and get to know crypto better and all that. But they're already like a pretty educated bunch. And so it's just, it was a really good community to be a part of and just sort of be surrounded by like-minded people. So yeah, you got a wonderful sort of group you got going there. But look, like you said, I think we do, because you got an incredible story, and I do want to get you on for your own dedicated episode. We sort of unpack you, but today we've got a very important episode, and we do this sort of, well, I think this is going to be our second time doing it, our 12 monthly predictions episode.
Yep.
So trying to predict what happens in 2025 in the crypto market. So
and also call out what we got ugly wrong in 2024.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
We're going to do a little bit of a review to start off the episode and unpack sort of what we predicted for 2024, what we got right, what we got wrong. Pav, why don't you kick us off?
Mate, let's dig in. So I think one of the things that, to give ourselves a pat on the back, we did call that 2024 would probably be a pretty stellar year for crypto. Bull market, I guess, as we can sort of say, is in full swing now.
Yep.
As it did sort of look like it was starting in 23. And another interesting one, Spotic Bitcoin ETF approval. So we did kind of call that one, but we took the opposite side of the view and said that it might be a sell the news event. And it was quite the opposite upon inception, where we saw some huge flows from institutions. Cooled off in that middle of the year period. But again, it seemed like, we didn't do too badly on that front.
Yeah, not too badly. We also tried to predict what the price of Bitcoin would be at the end of the year, I guess.
Which I know we both was like, God, we really doing this?
Yeah. Look, it's a tough one, but it's what the listeners want to hear, right? Me personally, I went a little bit more conservative than Pav, and I said 92K by year's end. We're sitting a little bit above that, but
I'd be pretty happy with that.
What are we? 13 days to until the end of the year. I'm not too ashamed of that one.
Yeah, I was a bit more aggressive, 150K US, so edging ever so closer. I think it's 107, 500 today. So see if we can get there. It seems like a tall order before the end of the year. But
time left, but something big would have to happen to hit that one.
No, but somewhere in between there seems to be the right answer.
Yeah, absolutely. Joe, is there anything that you sort of thought would happen in 2024 if you look back sort of 12 months?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I focused on, which is the same as every prior cycle leading up to the bull run, Bitcoin runs. And I back Bitcoin, and I still back Bitcoin today in a different way for 2025, which I'll talk about in the session. But one thing that I did really well, and I continue to focus on every single trade that I make, is I pair not against USDT, but I pair against Bitcoin.
Yep.
So is it outperforming Bitcoin, yes or no? And if the answer is no, why would you hold it?
Correct.
You can hold Bitcoin, and you look at the ugly truth in some of the charts where there's obviously the YouTube heroes spruiking the latest and greatest, buy this crypto is going to 10x. But the reality is most of them are still 30% down against Bitcoin, and Bitcoin's 50% past this all-time high. So when you look at the actual numbers and the data, then you can start seeing the truth. So I'm just grateful that I back Bitcoin, and I said that to all of our clients, and they back Bitcoin drastically as well. And there's nothing wrong with going into some of the more speculative stuff, like layer twos on Bitcoin, which is certainly a continuation of a prediction into 2025 for us. But yeah, I try and stay away from the hype and look at the actual logic behind some of the stuff, which can obviously get you undone when you start looking into memes. And if you're anti-memes, it's a gambling instrument, and that's fine if it's a short-term investment. But yeah, I think the main thing that we did right, and we will continue to do right, is backing Bitcoin.
Love it, mate. You can't go wrong with that.
I think that's a very nice segue into the next piece, the assets that we were watching at the end of 2023 into 2024. I think that what you just sort of said, Joe, pretty much encapsulates these results very nicely. We saw a couple of really outstanding performers and sectors throughout the end of 2023 that we thought, hey, look, if we do see momentum in the market, these altcoins could carry. And it was really hit and miss, right? So like two that I know I personally called was Say and Celestia. Both the two new, one being a modular blockchain, one a parallelized chain, layer one solution, meant to be the greatest, the new fastest kid on the block in terms of infrastructure. They are, I think Celestia is down 42% for the year, and Say is just up 1.4% for the year. So it just goes to show again, like everything just does momentum wise just flow back into Bitcoin, which, again, probably is outperforming most of these altcoins still year to date.
Yeah, look, I'm pretty happy with this little segment. And that's the reason I put it in, because I picked a couple of winners.
You did.
Which I'm pretty stoked with. So more of a conservative approach, I guess, with Solana. I said Solana would have a good year, and I think from the year to date, it's up about 117%. And then on top of that, I also said Sui, which I guess I maybe got a bit lucky with, because it's in the same sort of realm as Celestia, and also say SEI, is in like that new tech layer 1 that's sort of launched in the last 12 to 24 months. But Sui absolutely ripped basically in the last quarter, the last couple of months. So that's up 509% year to date. Pretty stoked with that one. I kind of stuck to my guns because there was a bit of noise around Celestia, and I did have a little bit of a run, but I don't know. I was already exposed to Sui in that regard, and so I stuck to my guns. Good team. Just felt like it was heading in the right direction, and it's done pretty well. So
Can't be too bad about that.
Can't be mad at all. But listen, like, we're here to sort of unpack what happens next year. What's in the past is in the past.
That's it.
And so we're looking forward to next year, and that's why we've brought Joe on to really try and sink our teeth into the sort of your expertise and the insights you bring to the table. So let's dive into sort of what we did last time, and really, I know like it's super speculative, but Bitcoin price prediction. I'll start off. I think we might go to about 180K US. That would be about 160% up from the last cycle's all-time high. So if you look at that sort of regression, it's always doing less and less gains. Joe, what are your thoughts on that one?
I'll share, I guess, a bit more data behind the prediction that I have. So we use Fibonacci extensions. 1.618 puts it at 120 US. I don't know if you've ever done the ghost pattern, the bars pattern, where you can grab from a prior cycle and use an overlay. That overlays to the dollar to 120 US.
Oh wow,
which is really weird, and obviously there's diminishing returns, etc. If strategic asset reserves take place in the US, it's going to change everything. And that's the number one thing that we're really watching right now, alongside other things like the MicroStrategy and Bitcoin ratios. So I think that 180K would likely be the top end. That's the 2.618 Fibonacci extension. I'm throwing out loads of numbers here to cross guard myself a little bit. I think the 3.618, the absolute high end, which we have hit in past cycles, is 250K US. So if the strategic reserve asset gets pushed forward, I look at Polymarkets for understanding the probability. It's 60% probability of a likely case that happens. And I think it's about 30% that happens within the first 100 days of the inauguration in 20th of Jan. So that's what I'm watching. I throw out predictions, but then I constantly monitor against the reality, you might say, the gap between your prediction and now. So I think the base case is 120 US. I think the likely case is anywhere from 150 to 180. And I think the high end, if everything aligns and everyone starts piling on board with using Bitcoin as a strategic reserve asset, would be up to 250 US in 2025. I know there's obviously a lot of calls of $1 million, which all the analysts start creeping out the walls when that happens.
It's good for a headline, right?
Yeah. Why do they produce content, right? Is to get clicks. So we're not stupid around that. But that's, I guess, the low, medium, and high, which is probably a bit nicer for viewers to have the different levels, you might say, of if we get anywhere over 180, you should be selling aggressively on your bags, or your short to medium term holdings. Anyway.
That is probably the smarter approach, giving a low, medium, or high, other than us just
going for a single digit,
in the dark.
Trying to call it to the cent.
Speaking of,
you've done pretty good though.
Actually, interesting enough, Joe. Like, I've applied a pretty similar methodology. I didn't plan this, but I'm very much a fib extension guy, because you can just take a prior trend, and I think you just create levels that smart operators in the market that need, to take that. Their whole objective is they need to get out, right? So they just need to commit to a level. We've seen like the fib levels, even as we've broken into a new all-time highs, we've gotten reactions off those levels. But I do think the macro is what's going to control how high we go. And that's where I really do think price targets are quite fast. But I think strategic reserve coming in, I think once the inauguration happens and the US actually announced their sort of stimulus and growth packages, the new debt ceiling being raised, which is going to happen, I think that's when we start to see, liquidity really enter in a big way. I think globally and macro speaking, if you sort of expect the world to sort of get into a phase of growth, inflation is a natural side effect, as much as people may not want to sort of accept that. Like, we will go through another phase of inflation. Bitcoin is arguably the best hedge against inflation. So again, if we're going to see a future where there's inflation again, more liquidity in the system, that spells high prices for Bitcoin. And then if we see these strategic reserves and copycat reserves in other jurisdictions, which I think will happen as well off the back of this too. Yeah, I mean, I've just been a little bit more ambitious with my fib target, and it is in that upper area. So I've chosen like 230K, and that sort of lines up as well with some logarithmic regression analysis as well. But if I had to pick a zone, I think that upper tier is what you get being ambitious, right? Like, I think it's a pretty important cycle for the asset. We've got the ETFs now, so access has never been easier. And if Michael Saylor keeps buying, got to aim higher.
That's it, mate. I hope you're right.
Yeah, me too.
I hope you're right.
Me too.
All right, next we're going to move into some more general predictions. So if we look back at the last sort of episode we did around this, it would be more of like, are we going to have a bull market? Are we going to have, the ETFs approved, and what would be the impact of that? So I guess, Joe, we'll start off with you. The way we are going to structure it is going to be like our safe bet, and then more of our like moonshot, like less sort of likely to happen, but something that could happen. What are your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, so I think the obvious one by nature is Solana ETF. So that will take place at some point next year. I can't remember the exact date of when the filing is finalized by, but that is a logical one. Now, I am not backing Solana right now. I hold 0 Solana.
Right.
Hold 0 Solana because when you look at the SUI Sol chart, it will tell you why I don't hold any Solana right now. So
don't mind hearing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think once Solana gets past the 260 US phase, which will likely happen at the start of next year, once a bit more momentum happens, the head that Trump appointed for the crypto division is Solana Bull. So he's backing it. He's going to help to make sure that happens and push it through, no doubt, for his own benefit. Unfortunately, that's the reality. So that would be one that I would back, but just everything's about timing and markets, right? So like I said, do you hold Solana now? Do you buy Solana because it's now near $200 and is undervalued? Well, look at the charts. I always say to all of our clients, is it beating Bitcoin? So would I rather buy Bitcoin or Solana? Is it beating SUI, like a direct competitor? So it's very obvious in that way. And until that happens, I'm not interested in Solana. But I think it's a logical, safe bet for next year.
Wonderful, mate. I would not be disappointed with that because full disclaimer, I have a big bag of Solana. So I'm sure an ETF being approved in the US would have wonderful implications on that one. Pav, why don't you hit us with your safe bet?
Safe bet. It is in the same vein. Like, I do think seeing, ETFs, when you think about them traditionally, it's a basket of assets, whereas currently we've only really seen singular assets. So I think seeing even thematic portfolio options where, you have like high growth or even the top 3 assets as like a bundle, to put it more simply, I think like those sort of products will be, I guess, in demand as crypto becomes more mainstream. There's more diversification of, people look to crypto for different reasons. Many people might use it for the volatility, to include volatility in their portfolios. Others, it might just be their way of getting speculative exposure in a growth sector. So, I think there even could be a space where there's an ETF where you see tech stocks in the US put side by side with growth stocks in crypto or growth assets in crypto too. So I just think that diversification piece is something that's going to organically mature as the market matures.
Love it, mate. And for me, I guess like we just saw in the last couple of weeks, or in the last week actually, Microsoft basically rejected the proposal to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve, which was, I guess, a bit disappointing. It's probably the first bit of big bad news we've had in a while. But my sort of safe bet is that one of these major tech companies, whether it be Amazon, Meta, Google, Apple, is going to start to put Bitcoin on their balance sheets. Whether they create a strategic reserve or not, that's another question. But it's like once one of them does it, I think the others will get FOMO and they'll all look to do it because it could be considered riskier to not have it than to have it, right? So I think in 2025 we will see at least one of those major tech companies to put Bitcoin on the balance sheet. For more of a riskier bet or whatever you want to call it, I'm looking at the BlackRock ETF. So that is the biggest Bitcoin ETF. I think at the moment it's trading. I think it's around the sixth biggest ETF in terms of trading volume. I don't think this is likely to happen, but I think there is a possibility it could happen, particularly around Trump and his strategic reserve and the US government. That BlackRock at some stage could become the highest traded ETF in the world. So that's more of my big bet. So yeah, Joe, do you have any thoughts on that one?
I was just going to add to the comments before about companies holding it on their balance sheet until the bill was pushed through of the fair value, how they actually see it on the balance sheet. That bill being pushed through will dramatically change the adoption rate of people putting it on their balance sheet. So until that is actually passed and they have more clarity on that, I think everyone's kind of holding back and waiting until that is solidified. And I think that's welcome to the world of crypto, where it's like they kind of make it up as they go along, and then it's like, oh, let's go and undo all the last few years. So I think we're very progressive in the space, but there's still standards that need to be met in order for companies to say, okay, now we can align. And it's the same with the ETF, right? How many family offices or pension funds, etc., wanted to invest in Bitcoin, but they couldn't until an ETF was launched. So I see it's a very, very similar situation when that fair value recording comes in for companies on that balance sheet with Bitcoin, then it will be a complete game changer.
So you see a big sort of shake up in the regulation space in the US?
Yeah, it's coming for sure. That's the bill that's on the table at the minute that's likely to get passed.
Do you think the world, such as Australia, will follow sort of the footsteps of the US?
It's really interesting. So one thing that I would love to do is sit down with people in power in Australia and just be like, right, where are you at? Because I've been through all the networks of Blockchain Australia, and it seems a bit of paper pushing and some people are making noise, but no one's really doing too much in Australia. And the reality is, you're going to lose market share. That's why the US is doing this in a big way, because they saw China rising and they were like, oh, okay, if we don't act quickly and bring this in-house, because Trump's trying to make America great again, which I actually genuinely think he is. I think he's kind of seeing that, and it's like, how do we defend ourselves against rising powers that be and solidify ourselves in the top spot? So it's the same for Australia. If we don't start stepping up the game, we're going to lose quality people, investors, everything else who are going to start to transition to the US for that. So yeah, I hope that maybe someone significant in power's listening or watching this right now, and they're like, okay, we need to start the conversations in a more proactive way rather than reactive.
Absolutely. And they do all listen to this podcast.
They do.
So they'll hear you, Joe. Pav, to sort of tie off this section, you've got a bit of an interesting one about a meme.
There's definitely a theme here. Mine's still on the whole. I think this is the big adoption wave, and for me, the easiest way for everyone to get exposure, I think, still is the ETFs. So yeah, I would definitely see there's a realm of opportunity where there's meme coin ETFs. And there probably will be market demand for it. It could be at the top of the meme coin cycle, but I mean, kind of let the market decide that. But that's kind of like my speculative guess.
Well, from what we saw with, the SEC coming after a lot of the layer ones saying they're unregistered securities, right?
Meme coins are safe.
The meme coins are safe in that regard.
Can't be a security.
Can you explain that a little bit?
That's pretty much it.
Okay.
Basically via the definition, like to receive something like a Wells notice, which is like an infringement on their Corporations Act. It's like needs to be deemed as something that provides like a promise or a return, or, this is going to do X, Y, or Z in the future if you give us money. Meme coins have no intrinsic value. It's basically whatever the market dubs its value to be, doesn't promise anything. That's essentially it. It's basically the fact that it is purely a tool of entertainment more than financial return or producing any return.
A gambling instrument. Is
Very much.
Yeah, it's probably the most honest way to say it. But that's fine. I mean, the way that I look at it, you bring people into the space with what they think they want, and then you educate them with what they actually need. And that's the transition from a gambler to a sophisticated investor.
Absolutely.
What's your hot pick? Bonk? Dog with hat?
Yeah,
Okay.
like if I had to speak for my personal investments, bonk would be nice. So yeah, we'll see what happens. But I think that could be, again, just in demand with the way that we've seen the cycles move in the past. We'll remember that Dogecoin Friday that brought so many people to the space. So I just think it's going to happen again.
Look, a couple of years ago, I would have told you're out of your mind.
Yeah.
But from what we've seen recently, especially, Elon Musk leading up the Department of Government Efficiency.
How funny is that?
Which is very intentional.
You can't make this stuff
You cannot make it up.
I can share the high risk one if you want.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So sticking with the Bitcoin narrative. So I'll tell you actually one approach that I do right now is if I invest in something like Sui or Eigen or something that's a significant outperformer, I will take at least 25-30% of the profit or the overall investment, and I will layer down with leveraged buys 2x on Bitcoin. So that's one of the main strategies that I've been deploying, which is obviously working well.
Yeah.
Bitcoin is getting it's the main narrative. It's getting the love from everyone. You can see that in the volumes. You can see that in the price. So that's a very obvious approach. It's a low risk approach. Obviously leverage, people go, no, I can't believe you're even talking about that. But if you see past that, you're leveraging the most stable asset, the one that everyone is backing right now. So it's to me, it's one of the best strategies out there. But deeper than that, obviously Stacks is a layer 2.
Big fan of Stacks.
Yeah. So building on Bitcoin is part of our trends report that we've just released, and it's a logical thing. So I think that Stacks is going to be a big performer, and obviously they're going through their update at the minute, which helps the I guess communication from Bitcoin to Stacks layer. It's all finalized on the Bitcoin blockchain, so security for me is a major thing. But going further than that, they're issuing the BRC20 standard, like the ERC20 is the BRC20, just for viewers, not you guys. With that, there's inefficiencies in the way that I guess all the transactions are bundled together. So the transaction output is something that they basically bundle junk transactions is the way that they describe it. So it's very inefficient. So doing further research a while back, I came across Runes protocol, and that for me was like, that's what I need to really understand. So I went on a webinar and I pulled apart Runes protocol, and then I happened to find Dog. So it's very timely because Dog as a meme, the number one meme on Bitcoin's blockchain, for me was just like, okay, that's what I need to do. So I did. And obviously that's been a massive performer. Yeah. So that for me is you're kind of safeguarding by staying within the walls of Bitcoin and leveraging the technology, finding efficiencies and improvement with building on Bitcoin and the technology behind it. And you're backing a meme, which is what everyone wants right now. So it was just kind of tick, tick, tick. So Dog for me, obviously Stacks is obvious. It will perform incredibly well. But Dog for me is going to be that more speculative outperformer, which is what, $1 billion or under $1 billion market cap right now.
Because Runes was like, I remember when it launched and it was like it was a big deal. It was getting a lot of sort of time in the spotlight. But then since then, I haven't seen too much of it. Do you think it's quietly chipping away and it's going to have sort of that big narrative in 2025?
Yeah, absolutely. As the spotlight continues to shine on Bitcoin, people look for other opportunities, and it's the development and progression, but it's also timing, right? We saw Stacks do crazy performance earlier. Was it the start of this year?
Yep.
So I think it's just timing. And when people, the challenge that we have in crypto is that people don't have a clue what's going on. That's the reality. So here I am being like, Runes Protocol, it's amazing. Everyone look over here. I don't care. Is it a meme coin? Yes. Great. Cool. I'll buy it then. So that's the reality of where we're at. So I think it's kind of a slow moving oil tanker through the water of, okay, there's actually a better way of doing this. And people are starting to wise up to it. And when the narrative starts spinning and the top YouTubers start spruiking it, then it gets eyeballs on it. So I think it's about progressively building positions when certain things happen. We're pressing up against the all-time high. It's the best cup and handle. I love drawing like squiggles on the charts and just watching them play out. And it was the best cup and handle formation, right from the bottom straight to the top, pull back, buy, sell, buy, and then just wait for it to rip through. So yeah, I'm patient with dog, and I'll continue to build my position in it.
This dog, is it like the one that is dog go to the moon?
Yeah.
And it's got the dots in between?
Yeah,
I thought so.
Yeah.
Nice. Just for anyone listening.
Yeah. It's the number one meme on Bitcoin.
There
So that's great marketing.
Love that. Before we move on to our next sort of segment, I do want to kind of pick your brain a little bit about what you said before about how you kind of use some of these altcoins, like you said, Sui, Stacks as well, and then you shave off profits and put it into leverage Bitcoin. So I like the approach, but I want to ask you, like, what are your thoughts on, like, the Bitcoin dominance heading downwards, and then more like focus on altcoins, and we see like an altcoin season playing out. Like, do you have an approach to that?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a chart that we look at all the time. I don't know. It's interesting. We have a lot of challenging discussions where we challenge the status quo, like we challenge the fear and greed metrics, we challenge the Bitcoin dominance chart and the relevancy of it as it continues to push through ETFs, and there's different ways of holding Bitcoin. So I see the dominance chart dropping, but I see Bitcoin continuing to outperform most of the major cryptos.
Sure.
So at the end of the day, I'm looking for the technical analysis side of things. I look to the fundamentals of Bitcoin, but I do watch that chart. And I watch many other charts like total market cap, total 2, 3, others.d outside of the top 10. So I'm constantly doing analysis every single day around this kind of stuff in our fund and outside with our clients. So yeah, it's quite a fascinating one to watch. But to me, it's all in the data, in the data of not just one chart, the data of the performance against other assets. So as Bitcoin continues to outperform against major cryptos that I'm backing, I know where I'd rather be, right? And I know that it makes logical sense for me to leverage something that's safe rather than try and find the 10x's in the high spec market. Like I can perform as well as my dog is, if not better, by running a 2x leverage on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Well,
So
it kind of hedges your altcoin position, right?
Absolutely.
Because at a point in the altcoin, like you look at an altcoin, let's just say Sui, because we've been talking about it, versus BTC, if that starts going down, well, then your leverage is counteracting the losses, right?
Yeah.
So it just helps keep the portfolio hedged up, really.
Yeah, exactly. It's a great balancing tool, because at the end of the day, some of the alts will drop 30 to 50%, like we saw recently.
No one wants to accept that that's going to happen more than a few times.
What did we see it 7 times in the last cycle and the prior one?
Even if it
before
happens
that.
6 times this time, right? Like it's still more to come.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think it's a smart way to hedge that and back what's inevitable, which is Bitcoin's performance.
Yep.
So whilst it might underperform based on spot, not on leverage.
Very true. Alrighty, I guess, I mean, you already touched on sort of the category you're looking at in altcoin, which is obviously layer 2s on Bitcoin, Stacks, and also Dog. But Pav and I might unpack what we think's going to happen, or, at least our
what we think.
uneducated opinion over here at Tapping into Crypto.
Yep.
Pav, why don't you kick us off with what sort of altcoin category you're looking at in the next 12 months, and then a particular asset that falls within that category?
So I've kind of got a bit of a weird answer here, but I'll sort of hopefully sort of speak to where I think there'll be opportunity in the next 12 months. There's been a lot of hatred towards Ethereum. And I think just from a very fundamental human nature perspective, for me, that always just sparks me up to think, well, there's opportunity there, because a lot of people just aren't quite paying attention. You look at something like the Ethereum Bitcoin chart, it's not really looked too healthy, but I mean, all tides will eventually sort of turn, I believe. So I do think there'll be a jousting match into 2025 between Ethereum and Solana. And when you think about, I guess, the growth that Solana's seen, since we purchased it back in even 2023, which, obviously we're laughing right now, but it does make me think from a perspective of asymmetry, like where is there more upside potentially? And I do think it is within the Ethereum ecosystem, specifically if you look at, areas that are trying to gain momentum, like the base chain, the base network. Already starting to see, I guess, a bit of meme coin activity on there, which is like your first warm sign. So for me, it's about understanding that, I think there'll be equal opportunity that we saw in something like the Solana ecosystem bleed into other chains. So yeah, for me, it's more about paying attention to just the movement of performance between Ethereum and Solana into 2025, because I think both will give the same opportunity, but maybe not at the same time. And I think the market will shift its preferences. So that's not a great answer potentially into like an exact asset, but it's more like being aware that, I don't expect only Solana to win or only Ethereum to win. I think for me, it's more understanding there'll be opportunities between both and not being married to your altcoin. I think that's a very important thing that I learned last cycle. And on that point, if I had to say specifically, it'd be looking for opportunities on again, like base chain, because that hasn't quite seen the amount of activity, let's say, the Solana ecosystem has gone through. So looking for, decentralized exchanges, yield-bearing farms, things like that, which will have some sort of utility or their token is needed for that protocol to exist. I think that's a good place to be looking. And then we're going to see things like NFTs, I think, just take off again at some point in time. So if you're into that thing, I think those opportunities will come up as well as like safe bets in terms of what to expect the market to do next. And could be wrong there. Like maybe the whole landscape's completely different and now it's all about meme coins and NFTs that matter. But I don't know. I'd rather just play into what we've seen in the past of, what people have thought and expected and done, and just sort of expect the same things to happen again. In terms of like a moonshot, it's not a super moonshot, but I still think it's quite speculative, just given how disruptive it could be. It's RWAs, or the real world asset space, Ondo Finance. So they've really introduced, I guess, a new mechanic of tokenizing things like government bonds and, being able to sell essentially US debt to the world in a more decentralized manner. I know, right? Crazy. But just the mechanism that they use is something called a yield-bearing stablecoin, which is quite, it's not new, but to make it mainstream, it's quite new. So a good example of what it does, instead of you having to stake and have your stablecoin inaccessible, you can just hold their stablecoin and it'll generate a native yield just by holding that stablecoin. I know if you look at the Australian consultation paper at the moment, they're barring that as not an approved type of stablecoin already. So it's going to be interesting just to see that regulatory space sort of play out, I think, in the next year or so. But at the same time, when there's disruptive technology like this, obviously the people that see the money at the end of the runway, they're going to make sure it's going to be successful. So they've got people like Coinbase, Pantera backing them financially. BlackRock is issuing all their funds and advising as well as a partner. So I think in terms of a project that's got a very solid foothold and doing something completely different and disrupting the current status quo, like Ondo Finance sort of ticks that box for me. That's kind of like my moonshot, I would say.
Thanks, mate.
I was just going to say, let's unpack that a bit further, because I think there's some really good points in there. The whole algo peg stablecoin is causing amnesia. That's probably why they're enforcing regulation early, which is good. Regulation people view in is hindering the space, but they are actually trying to protect people.
Correct.
Yeah.
So I think.
Can you explain why that caused a little bit of PTSD?
Oh, because of Luna.
Yeah.
I don't know how many people are around in the realms of Luna, but yeah, I think it goes back to a comment that you said of not marrying any crypto, because I think there was so many big players that were married to Luna.
They were banks.
Yeah. They were like what was it?
Crazy.
Real Vision, the one of the top guys there, lost everything that he had in Luna. He rode it to zero or close to zero because he had the blinkers on. So I think it's really interesting. One of the guys on our team who does fundamental analysis, he's like the smartest guy that I've ever met in this space. He predicted Luna before it happened. And we have it written down on a document that was released the year before. And he said, if this happens, this is the outcome.
Yeah.
because it was a death spiral.
Yeah.
And the selling, the unraveling just followed the whole way down, and there was almost nothing that could be done once it was started. So that is, that's I guess a touch on Luna, and it's probably going to trigger some people watching this because it was quite a shocking event to see.
Yeah, it was.
But it's the best thing that happened to crypto. And people don't realize it at the time. As you go through these significant moments in your life, in your trading career, in crypto as a space. But in order for it to grow, you need contrast. You need these significant events that really are perplexing for the space to develop and improve. And I think through significant events like Celsius, like BlockFi, like Luna, the space grows at a faster rate. So in hindsight, a lot of people should be grateful for it.
We have some legislation around stablecoins now in Europe. Like, maybe that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's very progressive. On the Ethereum thing that you mentioned as well. So I totally agree. I do think at some point Ethereum will rebirth itself. It is very interesting seeing the dynamics of that token unplay, and obviously the competition to Solana, to Sui, and that's the main charts obviously that I'd be watching. Whilst you can watch BTC, it's better to watch the actual competitors that it's up against to see the performance there and knowing when to shift. Instead of touching Ethereum, I've actually been looking deeper into Eigenlayer, so effectively a layer 3 with restaking, and that I look at Ethereum, Eigen against Ethereum, and it's outperformed it like 3 to 5 to 1. So to me, it's like back Eigen, don't back Ethereum until Ethereum starts actually performing.
Yeah, well, it makes sense, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I'm always like, I look at things in verticals. So I've got Bitcoin and Bitcoin ecosystem plays. I have Sui and Cetus and an eco play. And if I get into Solana again, Solana, and then I'll probably look at PopCat as an example.
Jito's a good one.
Yeah. And it's exactly the same with Ethereum. Looking in the Ethereum ecosystem, it just helps me to segregate my portfolio and know where I'm exposed to, how I'm allocated, what risk I'm taking on, but also how to perform really, really well, and knowing when to turn the dial is what I call it, turning out of Bitcoin and lower risks into the higher risk stuff. And we're kind of approaching that phase right now. So that's why I'm like, let's back at Eigen, let's not back Ethereum until Ethereum's getting to an interesting level, which it is now. So we'll watch that unfold.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll touch on mine quickly.
Yeah,
I like how you said before, don't get married to a coin. I'm probably guilty of that sometimes. And I think I've mentioned Sui about 10 times on this episode. So, look, I'll start.
I get the feeling I know what you're going to say.
Yeah,
and that's not because I've seen the show notes. I think I could have guessed this without the show notes.
Yeah, you would have been able to. So, my sort of safe bet, I guess, for next year is that Sui will enter the top 10 coins from market cap.
Confident.
It's sitting at about 15 now, so it's not too outlandish of a call to say that it could enter the top 10.
And just to add some further data, if it's operating at the same market cap as Solana, it'd be $37 today.
And what are we sitting at? We're sitting at $4.70.
Yeah.
What are you saying there, Joe?
Oh, I just think it's good. It's obviously pie in the sky predictions when you throw out data like that. But I try and do competitive analysis and say, well, what's the market share? What's it looking like? It's 186% to the top, the Sui Sol chart. So again, like always,
I see what you're saying.
Okay. So the strength of Sui is 186% up to the top. So that gap when I was first getting onto Sui against Solana was something like 18-20x, and now it's diminished. I don't even know what it's at today, but I think it's under 10. Because the market cap's significantly growing. So I agree. It's the shiny new kid on the block.
It is, yeah. It's the Solana of this cycle.
Exactly.
Last cycle.
Exactly. That's the great way to describe it.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's hoping for that one. And I guess my more moonshot category is looking at DPIN. So DPIN, for anyone that doesn't know, stands for Decentralized Physical Infrastructure. In simple terms, that kind of just combines like real world facilities with the blockchain and making sure that the data is stored, in a safe and secure way on the blockchain. So I think an easy one to understand is the Hive Mapper dash cams, where people are getting paid in a token to map roads through, their own dash cam. And, it's something that, is very valuable to us as humans. We use maps all the time. And also like public companies as well. Like they need up-to-date mapping data, right? And so that's what I sort of use to describe like an example of DeepIn. But the DeepIn project I'm looking at, and I actually mentioned this on last year's predictions episode. Now, it didn't have a token then, but it's Peak. So PEAQ. It is basically a layer 1 that is optimized for DeepIn, right? And it's basically, you see like the general purpose layer ones, such as Solana, Ethereum, even Sui. Peak is basically built for, and, it's I think it's also a marketing ploy. It's basically built for the niche of DeepIn, right? So it's already got 50 DeepIn applications built on it. The token only just listed or just went live a couple of weeks ago, right? And full transparency, I did get on the initial coin launch of that one. So got to call that out. But
your bags.
Yeah, of course. But I think,
do you believe in the tech, Ted?
Of course, I love the tech. There's nothing more I love about tech than DeepIn. So I think we've seen in the past, like the layer ones tend to capture the most value within, crypto and also just out of all the blockchain applications we see out there. So, we see some really cool new applications of crypto like DeFi and RWA and that. But, they often need like that base layer of the layer 1 to exist, right?
It's the shovel in the gold rush.
Yes, exactly. Everyone needs a shovel. So
I remember that one.
Yeah. And so it doesn't have. So I think as long as we see a DeepIn narrative, which I think we will, I think Peak will fare well. And that's, we're still sitting at about a 300 mil market cap. So it's still relatively small compared to some of those other coins we mentioned, Sui and what's that other one? Bitcoin.
Ondo Finance.
Yeah, Ondo, yeah.
That's definitely much lower.
Yeah, I had a win last year when I called out Sui. So fingers crossed. But obviously, like you guys have the data, right? So you guys are looking at this stuff every day. You said you've got fundamental analysis experts that are, just in the weeds, looking at these things, in the white papers and stuff like that. So is that sort of what you recommend, or are you more of a technical analysis guy yourself?
So the way that I describe it is if you look at one piece of the puzzle, you can't tell what the image is.
Yeah.
So I link as many pieces as I possibly can so I get a clear image. So technical analysis, fundamental analysis, on-chain data, macro, sentiment, like bringing all of that together, then you get a clear image and then you can make more sophisticated decisions, which is kind of the main word that I tend to use, because it really is. If you narrow down on one thing, you're missing the bigger picture. So that's all I kind of educate our clients on. Here's the piece of the puzzle that you need, and this is how it works. This is where to go and find the data so you can feel empowered and action it yourself. And that's how it brings it all together.
What would you say to someone who's looking to get exposure to crypto but doesn't have, the time to basically look in the ins and outs of these sort of things? Like, how do you just stick to Bitcoin, or can you actually get exposure to the wider altcoin market?
It's such a good question, because honestly, I share this advice a lot because I get people coming up to me saying, I want to get into crypto. I don't have much time. And to be honest, I don't care about it. And that's fine. Like there's always strategies for everyone. Recurring buys, buy Bitcoin, set it every week. Weekly's best on a Monday morning because it's the Sunday for the US. Prices always go down. Look at the patterns. It is the best time. I ran so much data. When do I want to recur and buy Monday mornings every week? Buy Monday morning every week. Set it up through SwiftX.
There you go.
And forget about it for the next 10 years.
Yeah.
That is literally it. And buy as much as you can possibly do to pay your future self first. Don't worry about getting dragged down into all the other things, because it's just noise at the end of the day. Sure, you might have some outperformers, but I wrote in the trends report, I was like, you can look for the needle in the haystack and spend all your time doing that, or you can sip pina colada on the beach. And that's the reality of the difference. I think it's just a general message for anyone that's in crypto. We spend so much time, effort, and energy looking for the outperformers. And then when you actually look at your performance against Bitcoin, if you're honest with yourself, which most people won't be in this space, you'll see that you're getting rinsed. And there's a short window to make crazy money, like 10x, 100x returns in crypto. There is, but there's a window, and unless you've really mastered what you're doing, you're just going to get ripped to shreds against more sophisticated investors that understand that. So yeah, I would say for anyone that doesn't have the time, doesn't really care too much, recurring buyers Monday morning, buy Bitcoin, pay your future self first, pay as much as you can. Like as an example, $500 every month if you bought for the next 10 years, it's something like 50 grand. And I think it's conservative to say that would be a 5x return on top, so 250. So $500 a month, no one's going to miss for the next 10 years. And then you can put down a solid deposit on a house, which is, if that's where you want to go, which hopefully you start to realize by the end of it, that's probably not the best investment, or at least taking a significant mortgage is actually a wise decision these days, rather than owning the underlying asset outright, because you look at the performance against Bitcoin to property. And it's 50% in the last quarter that Bitcoin's outperformed property, and 82%, James was saying, check on chain, some of his data since, I don't know, 21 or whenever it was, like the stats are there. Property has grown and it's expanded, but for the majority of people who are probably not wanting to spend too much time, the younger generations that get caught up in the memes and everything else in between, if they see the conditioning of I must buy a house, I must do this, I must do that, and they unravel that and they say, okay, what's actually going on right now and what are the outperformers, then Bitcoin makes sense. It makes a lot of sense based on data, not my opinion. And I always say that I don't share opinions. My opinions are irrelevant. I just look at data.
That's well said.
Well said. Well, we might wrap things up there. Bit of a longer episode today, but I think we got a heap of value out of yourself, Joe.
I was just getting started. I haven't even spoken about AI agents, gaming. It's all right. Maybe another time.
That's it. Yeah, well, I did mention we're going to get you on sometime in the next year. I think we still do that, also because I want to get on your yacht again. So I feel like planting the seeds early. But look, Joe, just quickly tell our listeners how they can get involved with CCI and yourself.
Yeah, thanks. So we offer a range of different products for different people at different levels. The main one is our VIP program, where we take someone who's either newer to the space or has been trading, investing in the space a while, and they're not getting the results that they expected or they can see as possible. So through that program, we really take someone on a journey from that stage to a sophisticated investor. Amazing support network, community, and results at the end of the day. That's the thing that we focus on. So that's the main VIP program. We have our newsletter as well, which is just a weekly release, where we share everything from fundamentals, macro. We've got a top 10 portfolio, all buy and sell levels, portfolio balancing for different risk profiles is a big thing that we have. And then we've got quantum profits as well, which you can find all of this on our website as well, cryptoconsultinginstitute.com. Quantum profits is Paolo, who I mentioned at the event the other day. Since August, he's got 100% of his trades accurate, which is phenomenal, at a 13% return compounded week on week, which is unheard of. So that's our more trading group, where he provides a couple of videos a week and some insights, and an Excel spreadsheet, recorded trades, entry, exit, and everything. So yeah, it's best just to kind of dive into the website, and you can book a free one-to-one strategy call with the team. But we finished up actually this morning. I was typing away, finishing up the trends report as well. So people can access the trends report, where we go into all the stuff that I haven't shared, which I skimmed the surface today. I didn't talk about banks, Bitcoin custodian or lending or anything like that. It's the well is deep and it just keeps going. So yeah, you can access all of that stuff for free as well.
Cool. We'll make sure to link that in the show notes and wherever
Thanks.
possible. So wonderful. Thank you so much, guys. We hope it's a prosperous 2025 for us all. We hope our predictions come true, but obviously do your own research and trade safely. Pav, any final thoughts?
Just want to call out bull market burnout as well. Don't get too stressed out about hearing all these things that, you know, you're thinking, oh, I've got to spend all my holidays just trying to dissect how I'm going to improve my portfolio. Take some time to rest.
Yeah,
I think that'll give us more clarity than anything else, to be honest. I'm guilty of that 100%, just spending too much time analyzing and over-analyzing. So spend some time with your family, loved ones, friends, get some sun, watch some cricket. And then, the bull market's not going anywhere. So
Awesome. Well said.
Well said. Alrighty. Thanks, guys. Catch you next time.
Thanks
Cheers.
for having me.